It started like most Saturday mornings in our neighborhood. Slow, a little too quiet, and just warm enough to make you wonder if you should turn on the AC. I was sipping my coffee on the front steps of my duplex, halfway through my last semester of college and just trying to keep my head down till graduation. The place was nothing fancy. 2-bedroom rental, peeling paint on the back fence, and a mailbox that leaned like it was tired of standing. But it was mine for now. Just a few more months and I'd be done with all of it. The roommates, the late-night study sessions, the passive-aggressive post-it notes about whose dishes were whose. What I didn't expect was that this sleepy little street had its own brand of drama waiting. Dressed up in clipboards and fake authority, I'd never had a run-in with the HOA before, mostly because my house wasn't even in the HOA. But that didn't stop them, or more accurately, a pair of self-proclaimed safety officer, from marching up to my porch like they were about to hand me a citation for breathing. They wore matching polos, had laminated badges that looked like they came from a printer at Staples, and walked like they thought they were on patrol in a war zone instead of a quiet suburban cul-de-sac. "You can't park your motorcycle in front of your house," one of them barked, not even bothering with a hello. I blinked. "You mean my house? On the street?" The taller one squinted like I'd asked him to solve a math problem. "It's against HOA regulations." That was the moment I knew they had no idea who they were talking to. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And stick around because this gets way more ridiculous than you think. I didn't say anything at first. Just stood there, letting the silence sit heavy between us. The two of them looked at each other like they expected me to back down, maybe apologize, maybe move the bike. But I just raised my mug, took another sip, and gave them the kind of look you reserve for flies that won't leave your sandwich alone. "Let me guess," I finally said. "You guys are with the fake HOA that doesn't apply to my house?" That clearly struck a nerve. The shorter guy, the one with the clipboard, stiffened. "We represent the community guidelines. This neighborhood expects a certain standard." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "So now you're code enforcement? Is that the vibe?" I motioned to the decal on their little golf cart parked halfway in my driveway, a faded sticker that said Neighborhood Safety Team, and a phone number I was pretty sure routed to someone's mom's landline. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Because here's what they didn't know. I'm a Marine. Reserve now, sure, but still trained, still alert, still carrying that quiet awareness that comes with knowing how to handle people who puff themselves up to look bigger than they are. And yet, I've also got a black belt in karate. Not that I go around advertising it, but in that moment I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Two wannabe hall monitors who thought they could intimidate someone young, alone, and, in their minds, powerless. They pointed at my motorcycle again, claiming it was a safety hazard, said it was aggressive-looking and not neighborly. I asked them what rulebook they were reading from. They dodged the question. One of them muttered something about having the power to issue citations or even remove non-compliant residents. That's when I stood up. I stepped off the porch slowly, not aggressively, not threatening, just with that kind of calm that makes people second-guess their choices. I set the coffee mug down on the railing and looked them both dead in the eyes. "You're not law enforcement," I said flatly, "and you sure as hell don't have jurisdiction over this house." The taller guy, to his credit, tried to keep up the act, reached for his belt like he had something there, but all I saw was a walkie-talkie clipped next to a pair of shiny new gloves that had never seen real work. "We've contacted the HOA board," he said, puffing out his chest. "They're reviewing your compliance. You might be looking at a fine. Or worse." I took another step forward. "There is no board for this street. You're making that up." They didn't deny it, just shifted, uncomfortable now. I could smell it. The fear, not panic, not terror, but that subtle whiff of uncertainty that creeps into a man's voice when he realizes he just poked something bigger than he can handle. "You know what I think," I said, my voice calm, quiet, like a fuse just waiting for someone to strike a match. "I think you thought I was some college kid who'd roll over the second you threw a clipboard at him. But I'm not just some kid. I've served. I've seen real authority, real discipline, and I don't take well to people trying to bully their way into power they don't have. They started backing up, muttering about rechecking the address, or maybe talking to the other guy down the street. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Sometimes holding the line is enough, but that wasn't the end. They'd be back. The next day they came back, this time with reinforcements. 3 of them now. All in matching blue polos, the words Neighborhood Patrol embroidered like it meant something. They parked the golf cart right in front of my driveway and stood there like a low-budget SWAT team, arms crossed, sunglasses on, clipboards out. I was in the garage, tightening the chain on my bike when I heard the knock. Loud, impatient, they were trying to shake the door off its hinges. I didn't answer right away, just wiped the grease off my hands, took a breath, and opened the door slow. "You're still not in compliance," the lead guy said, his voice firmer now, like he'd spent all night rehearsing that line in the mirror. "You've ignored multiple warnings." "You mean the random printouts you taped to my mailbox?" I asked. "Those weren't warnings. They were garbage." He narrowed his eyes. "You need to move the motorcycle, or we'll have it towed." That was it, the moment they crossed the line from annoying to dangerous. I stepped out onto the porch and made my voice sharp enough to cut through their nonsense. "Touch my bike, and you're going to have a real problem, because what you're doing isn't legal, and if you so much as lay a finger on my property, again I'll file charges for harassment, impersonation, and attempted theft." That shut them up, but they didn't leave, not right away. They stood there, looking at each other, realizing I wasn't going to back down. Then, and this part still makes me laugh, one of them reached into his pocket and pulled out a printed sheet of paper. "This is your final notice," he said, hand trembling just slightly. "We're escalating this to the HOA board." I leaned in. "Good. Tell them I said hi." 2 days passed. I figured maybe they'd finally realize they were barking up the wrong tree. But then I got a knock at the door. This time it wasn't a fake HOA patrol. It was a real uniform, a city police officer, calm but clearly uncomfortable. "Mind if I speak with you for a minute?" he asked. I stepped outside, motioned for him to go ahead. He rubbed the back of his neck and explained there'd been a complaint. Harassment, threats. Apparently, someone claimed I'd physically intimidated neighborhood volunteers and made aggressive gestures near community representatives. I stared at him for a second. Then I laughed, because of course they filed a police report. "That didn't come from the HOA, I said, already knowing the answer. "It came from 3 guys pretending they are the HOA. The cop nodded slowly. "That's what it looks like. I checked. Your property isn't even part of their jurisdiction. There's no binding agreement, no dues, no signed covenants. They're just a group of neighbors who made a Facebook page and started printing their own citations." That part hit me sideways. No real authority, no actual board, just a self-appointed bunch of bored middle-aged men playing sheriff in their spare time. Would have been funny if it hadn't been so deeply messed up. Then the cop dropped the kicker. We actually had another complaint. From a guy down the street. Said those same guys tried to enter his backyard last month claiming they were inspecting for yard violations. He's pressing charges. So you're not the only one. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about my bike. This was about control. And they'd been trying to take it from more than just me. Once the cop left, I stood in my driveway for a long minute. Arms crossed, jaw tight, staring down the street, like it might give me answers. I wasn't angry anymore, not exactly. I was insulted, embarrassed even. These guys had picked me because they thought I'd be easy. A broke college kid with a loud bike and no clue. Someone they could bend, without breaking. And if that was their read on me, how many others had they pulled this on? I decided to find out. That evening, I went door to door. Not aggressive, not looking for a fight, just asking questions. And what I learned? It blew the lid off everything. Turns out these guys, Mike, Larry, and Russ, weren't just harassing me. They'd been going after single moms, older folks, renters, anyone who they thought wouldn't push back. One woman down the block said they threatened to report her for having wind chimes that were too reflective. A guy 3 houses over said they tried to fine him for using the wrong shade of mulch. No one had pushed back because everyone thought they were legit. Or worse, they were scared to make trouble. That hit me somewhere deep, because I've seen bullies before. Overseas, in training, even growing up. They all have the same scent. Fear dressed up like power. And these guys, they were textbook, so I got to work. I filed a formal report with the real HOA for the neighborhood next to ours. Because, yep, turns out they were the actual, registered organization. I handed over names, dates, screenshots, even a short video of the clipboard trio standing in my yard making up rules on the spot. And I wasn't alone anymore. The next morning, I was at the community center the second it opened. I met with the real HOA board, an older couple named Jim and Roslyn, who had no idea any of this was going on. When I showed them the photos and explained what those 3 guys were doing, using fake documents, intimidating residents, calling themselves enforcement officers, Jim nearly choked on his coffee. Roslyn's face turned to stone. "We never authorized a safety team," she said quietly. "That's impersonation." Exactly. They promised to issue a community-wide notice clarifying that these men had no authority. But I wasn't stopping there. I filed a police report of my own. Harassment, impersonation, and attempted extortion. I pulled together statements from neighbors, screenshots of the phony citations they'd handed out, and even security cam footage from the house across the street, which showed them trying to peer into my windows the week before. Then I made a call to someone who knew exactly how to deal with people like this. My old instructor from the base, now a private security consultant. I told him what was happening, and without hesitation he drove in from 2 towns over. We ran drills on what to say, how to handle further contact, how to flip their intimidation tactics right back in their faces without ever touching them. I wasn't planning to hurt anyone, but I was planning to show them clearly, unmistakably, that I wasn't the guy they should have picked. That weekend I hosted a cookout, not for fun, for unity. I invited everyone who'd been harassed, made burgers, set out folding chairs, and let the truth do the talking. We weren't victims anymore. We were a coalition now, and we had a plan. They showed up just before sunset. Same blue polos, same smug looks, except this time they weren't. Met with silence or hesitation. They pulled up to the curb, golf cart squealing like a dollar store parade float, and started marching up the driveway with their clipboards raised like shields. But I wasn't standing alone on the porch this time. Behind me were 6 neighbors, to my left, Mrs. Simmons, the wind chime lady. To my right, Luis, who they'd accused of unauthorized grilling. Even old Mr. Keene had come out, cane in hand, ready to watch the show. We didn't say anything at first, just stood there, waiting, letting them sweat in their khakis. "You've been warned," the tall one barked. "This bike is still here. You're in violation." "No," I said, stepping forward. "You're in violation of about 6 different laws." I handed him the notice Jim and Roslyn had sent out. Big, bold letters at the top. No individual or group has the authority to enforce rules outside of official HOA jurisdiction. Beneath it, the real police report numbers. My case, Luis's, Simmons's, all filed, all legit. The shorter guy started backing up. "We were just trying to keep the community safe." I raised an eyebrow. "By lying, threatening people, peeking into windows." Then my instructor stepped out from behind the car, quiet, all calm muscle and precision. "Afternoon," he said, folding his arms. "You boys got a license to impersonate officers? Because if you don't, this is about to go real sideways." You could feel the shift in the air. That exact moment they realized they weren't the ones in control. No more bluffing, no more fake rules. They were just 3 guys with clipboards and a power trip that had just run out of gas. "Get off my property," I said. And this time they listened. They didn't come back after that. Not the next day, not the next week. Their little patrol cart disappeared from the street like it never existed, quietly pushed back into a garage somewhere to gather dust and shame. Word got around fast. The community notice hit mailboxes. Then came the police follow-ups. I heard from Luis that one of them had already lawyered up, not to fight, but to try and settle. Mrs. Simmons baked a cake. I didn't ask why. I knew. The energy in the neighborhood shifted almost overnight. People started talking to each other more, asking questions, checking in. For the first time, I wasn't just the guy with the motorcycle and the Marine flag in his window. I was the one who stood up when no one else felt like they could. And that meant something. But I'll be honest, the adrenaline left a hole behind. It's weird how quickly you get used to being on alert, to watching shadows, reading people, preparing for the next swing. When it all stops, your body doesn't know what to do. I'd catch myself checking the porch camera twice a night just in case. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., expecting footsteps on the gravel. They never came. Instead, I started getting thank you notes, handwritten. One from the elderly couple across the street who said they'd been too scared to put out lawn decorations because of threats about visual clutter. Another from a teenager who said he almost moved out because he felt targeted for having friends over. That one hit me hard, because that was the quiet damage no one sees. The fear that settles in and makes people smaller than they're meant to be. And maybe that's why this all happened, because someone had to say enough. I still park my bike, out front, chain cleaned, helmet resting on the seat, not because I'm trying to prove something anymore, but because it belongs there, just like I do. The neighbors wave now. Some stop to chat. A few even joked about forming a real safety teammates, one that actually helps people instead of threatening them. I said I'd help organize it, but only if we left the clipboards out of it. We laughed. It felt real. A few weeks later, I got a letter from the city. Not a fine, a commendation. Turns out exposing those 3 clowns and filing those reports triggered a small audit. The city found discrepancies in how neighborhood watch programs were being unofficially run. Policies were rewritten. Oversight improved. All because 3 guys messed with the wrong front yard. And me? I finished that. Last semester. Graduated. Moved into a new place a few miles away, one with more space, better light, and not a single fake patrol in sight. But sometimes I drive back through that neighborhood, just to cruise past the old house, just to remind myself of what happens when you stand your ground. It's not about muscle, or training, or even knowing the law better than the other guy. It's about not letting fear shrink you, about looking someone in the eye when they expect you to fold, and saying, no, not today. That little street? It's quieter now, peaceful, and not because someone forced it that way, but because someone finally stood up. So, if they ever come knocking again, clipboard in hand and mouthful of rules, they better hope it's not my porch they pick, because I don't bluff, and I don't back down.